everyone, welcome back to my channel. This week's video is a very exciting one because I will be giving you an in-depth look at our new polygel collection, which is the Moon Phases collection. This collection has already officially launched and is available for purchase now. This video will be giving you an in-depth look. This includes 3 new polygel shades and our new clear rubber base. We'll show you in depth each color and swatches, and you'll see how I created this chrome heart set with this new collection. We have bundle options available and individual options if you have specific colors you want to purchase, and this design and theme is one of my favorite ones yet. The packaging for it is so stunning. I feel like it is very in line with our branding, and it just is a really nice theme for summertime and transitioning into fall. I've mentioned this before, but we have a graphic designer that we work with closely on every collection, and I've done so since our very first collection to now. So here's how everything looks together. Of course, I included some bundle options with our classic polygel brush. You can purchase these shades individually or as a full collection. There's different bundle options on there that you can check out on my website, but let's get into the first color, which is Halo Dust. This is an opaque white polygel, but it has a really fine, delicate shimmer. Sometimes it's a little hard to see on camera, but like other glitters I've done for our gel polishes mostly, it is a very fine glitter, so there's no chunky pieces and it applies so smoothly. Personally for me, when it comes to polygels or bases, I don't like my glitter to overpower the base, so that's how I wanted this specific color to be. And it's our same buttery formula, nothing has changed with that, so this is how the color looks just on a lint-free wipe, and then you'll see me apply it more in detail later. Now we have Moon Foam. This is the perfect milky white polygel. This is actually my favorite color from the collection and my current favorite. I love Halo Dust as well, but this is just like the perfect neutral base, especially when you want something that's a little bit subtle and soft, but that's different from kind of your typical peachy or pink bases. This is like going to be my absolute go-to base color. It is a true milky white. It's very soft, it's very delicate, and it's buildable, so you can build it up to be more opaque or more translucent to your liking. And then we have Glass Current. This is our long-awaited clear polygel that I've been talking about for some time. So this is perfect for building clear extensions or doing encapsulation or just using it for overlays on natural nails or things like that where you want the color to be clear. I feel like nail art with a clear base or integrated with that is very in right now, so I'm excited to try out some of those designs. And next we have our rubber base coat. This is our official gel base coat that I've been talking about for some time as well. As you can see, the bottle is the same exact size as our gel polishes, but the background of the label is black. This will help you distinguish between our colored gel polishes and when we put out just foundational products like rubber base, or when we have top coats and stuff coming out soon as well, so you can tell the difference between those easily. Really excited to have this as our official gel base coat because it's more versatile than just a regular gel base coat. It's thicker and it provides a little bit more flexibility, and to me, I get better retention with this with polygel nails. You can also use it to apply clear Gel X extensions. I have a tutorial coming up on that soon. Great for growing out your natural nails. You can use it for structured manicures, gel overlays, add it to your press-on nails before nail art to add strength and reinforcement. It's kind of like a builder gel in a bottle between a gel base coat and a builder gel, so it's really nice. And this specific formula for the rubber base is HEMA and TPO free, so excited to have that as well. And that's the full collection, which you can shop now on my website at doperthanyournails.com. Link is in the description, and we do ship worldwide. So let's put this collection to use and start creating our Chrome Hearts polygel nail set. So first off is nail prep. We are starting by pushing back the cuticle. I'm just using a cuticle pusher and starting to gently push back that skin from corner to corner. And I do want to note that I have my, I don't even know what this is, but I did this. I take full responsibility for this. I was just like picking at my nail, so there's a little bit of a ridge there with the free edge, but we're gonna try to work around it for the nail tips. But I would actually recommend letting your nails grow out a little bit before you maybe put on a nail tip. But this is gonna be a case of do as I say, not as I do, but I just wanted to point that out. So we're just continuing by pushing back the cuticle on all 5 nails, and we are going to be using an e-file for our prep as well. So what I like to do before I use my e-file is actually use baby powder to help further dry out the skin. It helps lift up the dead skin more and make it easier to use your e-file, and it makes it a lot more comfortable to use as well. And you just want to make sure you do this over a paper towel or something because it can be quite messy. I just use a brush and apply the baby powder over the cuticle area, kind of working that in. And you want to let it sit there, don't brush it off. Let it sit on the other nails while you're working on one nail, and it will basically help absorb the oils on the skin. So this is really great for working on clients as well. If you have clients with stubborn cuticles or they're prone to their skin kind of being sensitive, maybe with the e-file, this really helps just dry things out and make it more comfortable and easy to do a thorough cleanup, as you can see here with my micro taper bit and then my cuticle ball bit. For me, when I do this prep routine, clipping the dead skin off becomes extremely comfortable and easy. I just do a little bit to where I see it lifted. You can skip this step. You could also use your cuticle ball bit at a higher speed to remove that skin. It's up to you. But I will say if this is something you find uncomfortable or scary to do, this prep routine definitely helps with that. And the final step is using a 240 grit sanding band. This is a very fine grit sanding band and I've seasoned it before using it. I'm using my e-file at about 4 to 5 RPMs and I use it over the nail plate and in the cuticle area as well, just to remove any remaining skin. Make sure that if there's any old product on the nail plate, that's removed. We have an even surface and we are not like excessively drilling into the nail. We're just going over it once or twice, just making sure everything is buffed out and the shine is removed so it can help with our retention. I'm actually trying out new nail tips today, so I wanted to show you how I might organize nail tips that I get from Amazon or other companies that just come in these bags. So I just take an old container like this that maybe I have had tips in before that I've already used up or don't have much in there, and I will just organize it in there based on the sizes the best that I can. So we are doing square tips today, doing a square nail set, and these ones have a lot more of a curve, so I'll let you guys know how I end up liking them. But I am trying out a new square nail tip, which is a little bit scary, but I feel like I would like to try out more brands and see if there are better ones out there. But I'm just filing this down a little bit. It was a little bit too big, so I'm just making sure it fits sidewall to sidewall. I haven't had nails on for a little bit on this hand, so I was just like picking at it. This is why I don't like letting my natural nails grow out too much or not having my nails done. But I am going to glue a nail tip on there, just maybe a little bit higher than I normally would. But like I said, if you're in a situation like that, file down your nails as much as you can comfortably, see how it's looking. But if it's painful or uncomfortable or your nail is injured, definitely wait until it heals to put a nail tip on there. The smallest size for the pinky was also a little bit too big, so I'm filing that down as well, just trying to make sure I don't file too much into the corners or sidewalls. So if you are in between sizes, it's always better to size up and file down a little bit versus trying to fit a smaller nail tip on there. Now I'm just going to cleanse the nails with a lint-free wipe and some alcohol. You could consider this dehydrating in a way. It does dehydrate in a sense, but I'm also going to glue on my nail tips and dehydrate again after that. Dehydrating is basically just removing any oils and dust from the nail plate with acetone or alcohol, and most dehydrators I believe are a mixture of alcohol and acetone. Usually I use Young Nail Swipe, but lately I've just been using acetone because that's what I have on hand and I've just been experimenting. Anyways, long-winded way to say we will get to that in a moment after gluing on our nail tips and blending them in. So I'm using a brush-on glue. This is Young Nails brush-on glue. This is like my go-to brush-on glue that I've used for years. I like a lot of their prep products, and all the products I use from them are linked in my Amazon storefront in my link tree, besides the products that I use for my own brand. And actually applying from pinky to thumb is easier. With a thumb, it kind of gets in the way a little bit, so I've been trying out this routine lately and it definitely is a little bit easier, especially with long nail tips. So you just apply a little bit of glue at the center and then bring it out to the sides, and then you just want to apply it on the free edge of the nail and hold down with pressure for about 10 seconds. I actually like to make sure I'm holding on the sides as well for a little bit, and even on some other angles, just to make sure the nail tip is really secure and has made contact at all points. Glue is one that air dries, so about 10 to 15 seconds later it should be pretty much dry and secure. And if you have crooked fingers or you're working on clients with fingers that are crooked, you can try applying the nail tip kind of coming down in line from the knuckle. So that means the nail tip might not be applied completely straight on, but when you apply the product, it will give the illusion of the fingernail being completely straight. So personal preference, but up to you, but that is a way that you can do that. Now I'm taking a nail tip cutter and I've applied magnets to it at one end just to measure out the length that I'm going for, and I'm just making sure that I'm cutting them straight on. It's going to look a little creepy comparing this way, but if you can compare your fingernails and thumbs this way, this is the best way to do it, because sometimes it doesn't completely align perfectly across the nails when you use this method, because some nail beds are longer than others. For me, this would be the thumb in this case, so I just trimmed everything down a little bit to match. Or you could leave it as is. That means the thumb will technically be a little bit longer. The nail tip would be the same length, but if you're measuring the nail from cuticle to free edge, that would be the correct way to do it. Now we're blending the nail tips. Because these nail tips are more curved, I want to make sure there's no harsh line between the natural nail and nail tip, but I'm making sure that I only file on the plastic nail itself. I like to use the e-file on the rest of the plastic nail tip. I'm using that same very fine grit sanding band at a speed of about 4 to 5 RPMs. If your nails are not lasting and you feel like the polygel is peeling from the nail tips, I would say try this out. I know that there are some nail techs that don't do it and have fine results, so you can experiment and see what works best for you. I've always done it and I don't mind taking the extra time to do into it, and I do think it does help with retention in some way personally, and it just helps make sure that the nail tips look nice and clean and even. You want to make sure there is a perfect parallel line coming down from your sidewalls down to the extension of the nail. That's how you know you have the right size. That's how you have the perfect guide for your application. And it especially is important for square nails because that's how you end up with square nails that are basically the right proportioned length and size for your nails, that aren't too blocky or too tapered. Next, I like to scrub with this brush. It just helps remove any dust that might be under the nails. And now to properly dehydrate one last time, I'm using 100% acetone and these swab sticks. You'll see how that cloudy effect dries up right away, which means that our prep is really good. I'm just being cautious not to apply too much acetone near the plastic nail tip because it will melt it. We've removed any oils and dust and cleansed, we can go in with our primer, which is Protein Bond. It does exactly what it says. It helps bond and ensure that your product is sticking to your nails. It creates an anchor for it, so I'm just applying it to the natural nail only. Once that air dries, we are going to apply a layer of gel base coat and fully cure in our lamps, which also helps ensure that our polygel sticks to our nails. Now we are going in with our clear rubber base, which is the base coat that I showed from our new collection earlier. So I like to apply it to the natural nail and the nail tip. It also just helps kind of level and smooth everything out between the natural nail and plastic nail tip, so you have an even surface for application. But the main purpose is really that polygel is a hybrid gel system, so it needs some sort of gel base coat to help it adhere. So I just like to use a thin layer of this over the entire nail, fully cure in my lamp, and do not remove the sticky layer. I'll start by applying it at the natural nail like I would for gel polish, and then just polishing it down the entire nail tip. It also just provides a protective layer for your natural nails when it comes to remove your polygel sets or even do fills, so that when you are filing down and removing the product, whether you're going to do a soak off or not, sometimes I just file off the product and leave a thin layer of the gel base coat and work over that. That is another reason that using a product like this as part of your foundational prep is really nice. I have my nail lamp off camera, but like I mentioned, I fully cure for 60 seconds and I just make sure that I'm leaving the sticky layer as is. Now it's time to prep our liquid, which is 70% isopropyl alcohol, and I'm also going to be using the polygel brush from my brand for application. It has a bigger brush head and a taper design, which makes it easy to apply and smooth the product out, makes application time faster, and this liquid is what helps mold your polygel and help ensure it doesn't stick to your brush, since polygel has that toothpaste-like consistency. So I will dip my brush into this liquid throughout application as needed, but it's important not to oversaturate your brush, and I actually try to drain out a little bit on a lint-free wipe before using it. So the first polygel I'm going in with is Halo Dust, the first new color from our Moon Phases collection. This is that white polygel with a very fine shimmer, so I've applied my first bead where the natural nail meets the nail tip in a circular type of placement, and now I am starting to use a patting and dragging motion to start blending down the product and filling it out to the nail tip. We are doing the 2-bead method since these nails have some length on them, so the first bead focuses on the free edge. The liquid off camera, just kind of out of the way, but this is how I dip my brush in the liquid as needed. When I start feeling the polygel feel a little bit too sticky or start to drag a little bit, I will dip my brush into the liquid, drain it on a lint-free wipe, and then just go back in and start smoothing everything out. But really, I don't have to dip too often. You can see I get a really good amount of application in there, and we're really working on the product quite a bit before I have to go back in. So if you're using my brand's polygel, you should have the same experience. It should be pretty smooth and buttery and not too sticky. Another tip I have been mentioning in all my videos recently, and I want to mention here, is I do like to put the polygel into the fridge for about 5 to 10 minutes before application during the summer months. It's been extremely hot, so this will help the polygel just ensure that it's the perfect consistency. Like acrylic, polygel is temperature dependent. So now I'm working on my cuticle and apex bead. I've cured the first bead, and the second bead is placed below the cuticle area, and we start to work it towards the cuticle and use light tapping motions and make sure it's nice and flush with that area, really just using a light amount of product in that area. You don't want to flood the cuticle. And then the bulk of the product is supposed to be in the apex area, which is the area that I'm working on here at the center. So you'll see me use light tapping motions there, make sure I'm not flattening the product too much, and then I'm using even lighter pressure at the sides to make sure the product is thin there but tucked in and flush and as part of the entire structure. So the bulk of your product should be in the middle throughout and in that apex area, and then as you get the apex area pretty much situated, you can start dragging the rest of that bead down gently to the rest of the free edge. You can alternatively use the 1-bead method, but whenever people ask me for tips and advice, I'm always going to recommend using at least 2 beads or multiple beads, however many beads as you need, to help build up that structure in a way that's feasible for you, and you basically get to break it down into small steps. For the pointer, I'm going in with Moon Foam, which is that beautiful milky white color that I showed at the beginning, also from the new Moon Phases collection. We're going to use all the colors from the collection, so I'm just kind of rotating through them. I'm using the same technique here with the first bead. I've applied it where the natural nail meets the nail tip, and I'm starting to use my brush to start to pat and drag that down. We're just making it fit to the nail tip because we've sized our nail tips correctly, made sure they're nice and flush. All we have to do is use that shape as a guide. Especially for this bead, I'm constantly making sure I'm swiping those sidewalls, removing any excess product so that there's not extra product getting cured under there. That's what can start making your nails look bulky. You'll see me constantly doing this and even going under the nail. This brush helps a ton. The larger brush helps smooth everything out. It makes it really easy to clean everything up. And I also like to make sure I'm storing my polygel like this in between application to prevent air bubbles. Now we're going in with our second bead after we've cured that first one. This is our cuticle apex bead, and like I mentioned, I start way below the cuticle, and I'm also making sure that I'm building up the apex as I'm pushing towards the cuticle. But really, you can do this in any order that you'd like. Because polygel doesn't cure till you put it into the lamp, you could technically work on the apex area first and then go back up to the cuticle. Sometimes I do it one way where I do the cuticle first, sometimes I do the bottom half first and then go back. It just depends, but that's the one thing I love about polygel and its versatility. If you feel like it's just a super hot day and your polygel is running a lot, you can definitely do the apex area and free edge first and then come back to the cuticle just so you do it. You saw that I also used like a backwards swiping motion with my brush. Another great thing about polygel, it doesn't dry till you put in the lamp, so you can swipe backwards as needed. So this was the color that I was saying is my personal favorite from the collection. I love all of them, but something about this milky white I've just absolutely been loving. It is a really great neutral color to have in your kit besides the typical peaches and pinks. It's soft, like it's not like this glaring opaque white, so you know, it's not like Halo Dust. Halo Dust is a opaque white, but it also has that shimmer in it, but this just has like that really soft, subtle look that you can build up. So here I ended up adding another layer. You want it to be a little bit more sheer, don't add as much. You want it to be a little bit more opaque, you can add more. But also just in general, when you're doing longer nails, if you feel like, you know what, I need to add another bead of polygel, build up my apex a little bit more, you can do that. You just want to cure in between, and that is my 100th and however many reasons I've listed that polygel is so great for its versatility. For the next nail, I'm going back in with Halo Dust, that shimmery white, so just doing a little bit of a pattern here. And so that first bead is being applied in that same place where the natural nail meets the nail tip. I will let the music play while you watch me apply this color, and then I'll come back for the fourth nail, which will be a different polygel base. Now we're going to use Glass Current, which is that clear polygel, our third and final color from the new Moon Phases collection, and we're going to build a clear extension with this gel. I know for clear polygel, a lot of people like to use it for encapsulation, which you definitely can, or just to do like overlays on natural nails where maybe you don't want a base color with the polygel, but you can actually use it for clear nail extensions just like this. I think clear nails, even with extensions, look really cool, and there are a lot of fun designs that you can do with them, which we will see today when I go ahead and do the Chrome Hearts nail art after the application and shaping is done. You use the product in the same exact way. We don't use any more or less. I did the same first bead, cured it, and now I'm doing the cuticle bead and working it up towards the cuticle with the edges of my brush, just tilting side to side and then bringing that down the rest of the nail. With any of these colors and polygel in general, it's also just about being mindful of the pressure that you're applying. You don't want to press into the product too hard. You just want to work on top of it lightly using patting and dragging motions, but you don't want to overwork the product either, or else you will drag too much off and remove the structure you've created. You can also use clear polygel to cap colored polygels that you use and just prevent overfiling of the nails. That's a great thing to do in general or as a beginner. I don't really tend to do it anymore, but I know that a lot of people still like to use that technique. For the last nail and the pinky, I am finishing off with Moon Foam, which is that same milky white polygel we used before. Even though the pinky is a lot smaller, I still find using this bigger brush helpful. I just use it a little bit more tilted side to side and angle it as needed. Measuring out how much polygel you need to use for the pinky can be a little bit tricky because you don't need as much as the other nails, but at the same time you still want to make sure you're using enough to build up the structure properly. For that reason, I still like to use the 2-bead method on the pinky and just make sure that I am building up the structure in pieces so that first layer is fully cured, and then I'm going in with the second bead. The second bead might look like a lot of product initially, but once we start working it into the apex and cuticle area, it's actually the perfect amount, and there's enough to bring down the rest of the nail to make sure there's sufficient coverage. As a beginner, I would never put enough product on the pinky, and it would just not be strong enough structurally, and it would just snap at the fingertips. And now I try to really make sure that I'm building up the apex and cuticle the same way that I would for any other nail, but of course making sure it's not too bulky, it has the right amount of product, and so on and so forth. Now it's time for shaping, so I'm taking some alcohol and a lint-free wipe, and I'm just removing that sticky layer that you'll see after you cure your polygel. It shouldn't be too bad. I feel like with my brand's polygel, the sticky layer is not too sticky, so you just want to wipe that off. And then I've got my dust collector ready and my e-file, and I'm also wearing a face mask. I'm starting off with a 5-in-1 bit and using this to clean up around the cuticle area. I like to use this at a low speed, and I try my best to use it parallel to the nail plate. This is a fine grit bit, so it's not too coarse, which means it's great for the cuticle area, and it's also great for the rest of the nail if you don't have a lot of debulking to do. You can also use it to clean up underneath the nail. The tapered edge helps clean up the cuticle area, but the bulk of the bit, which is why it's called a 5-in-1 bit, is actually really great for debulking the nail and also using it side to side, which is this motion here. You want to mostly focus on this motion and try your best not to flatten out the top of the nail. Regardless of which area you're working in, but especially in the cuticle area, you want to let the drill bit do the work for you. Don't put any extra pressure on it or press into the nail. That can damage your nails, but also just result in you over filing. Even when I'm working on the free edge and the rest of the nail, I do my best to try to keep it parallel and let the drill bit do the work for me, even if I'm using a back and forth motion like this. Even for extra product under the nail like this, you want to work at it very gently. It's very easy to accidentally file into the corners or nick the sidewall, so I try to brace my fingers and hold my drill really tight while gently working away that product and removing it. So I'll go ahead and let the music play while I finish up with this bit, repeating the same process. If you want more in-depth shaping tutorials, you can also find those on my YouTube channel. Lots of long-form videos that go into shaping in more detail. So next step is hand filing. This is one of my favorite parts because I feel like this is when you really start to see the shape come together. I'm starting with a 100/180 grit hand file. I like to use this over the surface of the nail. I start by creating this guideline down the center. A little hard to see just because the base color is white itself, but this really just creates a visual guide for me to follow as I'm filing the surface of the nail. The goal is just not to flatten across the top like a seesaw motion. You want to preserve the structure of the nail and keep that curved shape. So that guideline just generally divides the nail into two sides, and you just want to focus on filing towards one side with your file, and once you've done that, you want to switch over to the other side. I just focus on going over the one side one time fully. I try not to go over any other areas more times unless I need to. Once you see that chalky texture indicating you filed over that area, you can go ahead and move on. And I used to use an 80/80 grit hand file over the surface of the nail. You can do that as well, but just keep in mind polygel is softer than acrylic. Doesn't mean it's not as strong, but it will file faster. So sometimes using a less less coarse file can be better. But basically we're just, again, following that curve that you see under the nail tip, that general shape. As we file on top of the surface of the nail, we are trying to preserve that shape and follow that guideline. I also like this round shape of the files for the surface of the nail, and then I like the square shape for the free edge and the sides, which you'll see I switched to a sharper file for that. I feel like it's a little easier to follow that curved motion and see what you're doing, especially if you're filming with the round file. They're just a little bit smaller, and I think the shape helps. Files and drill bits that I use along with the e-file are also all linked to my Amazon storefront in the description. So I'm continuing to follow that same process, creating that guideline down the center, filing towards one side and then switching to the other. You'll see that I tilt and angle my hands differently depending on which way I'm filing, just whichever is more comfortable. Even when I create this guideline down the center, sometimes it's not completely at the center. It doesn't really matter. It's just there as a general guide. And I do think the combination of an e-file and hand file really helps when you're trying to perfect your shaping. I think they do similar things, but they also do different things. And I do think the hand file in a way files the surface of the nail in a way that I don't feel like the e-file can give you personally, but I also feel like the e-file helps file in a way that you can't really do with the hand file for like the cuticle area and stuff. So just try things out, see what works best for you. There are techs that like to use maybe only one or the other. You know, even my process has evolved over time, and who knows what it'll be, you know, as time goes on. But this is kind of where I'm at with my shaping process. I am using less tools, but I still have always stuck to the combination of hand filing and the e-file. And a little tip, if you feel like your shape looks a little bit more bulky or not as clean at the free edge, I would really try to focus on making sure the product is thin there when filing. So really focusing on filing at more of a curve in that area really helps. And I'll also show you how you can clean that up more with the 80/80 grit hand file when we file against and underneath the edges. Even during application, I try my best to swipe off the extra product at the free edge, but especially for square nails, I feel that if the product is not super thin there, it can kind of throw off the shape, but that is something you can clean up with filing, which is really nice. Now for the final steps with our hand file, I'm using an 80/80 grit hand file to start filing under the sidewall. So this is a much more sharp file. It's pretty coarse, which means that it gives you that crispy shape. So I'm starting by filing under the sidewalls. You want those to be nice and neat. You want them to be parallel, but the thing you just want to be careful of is not filing into those corners or into the sidewall as I was pointing at earlier. Whether you're working on yourself or your client, you can kind of pull the skin back like this. It does help just kind of create a little bit of less tension in that area. Just make sure that the skin is not right up against the nail, which really helps ensure that you're not, you know, accidentally cutting yourself or your client. The purpose of this step is to remove any excess product that may be under the sidewalls. It just helps ensure that they are parallel. As I mentioned, a lot of times we focus so much on the tops and sides of the nails, but really making sure your nail is clean from underneath also helps reduce any appearance of bulkiness. I went ahead and filed against the sidewall, being careful not to file into the corners or at an angle, and then I filed against the free edge just to sharpen that up. I'm doing it at a little bit of an angle. I didn't create too much of a C curve, so this is how it's looking. Or is it like the moon cut nails? I go back and forth on the way I shape my square nails, but this is what we're going for today, but we're gonna clean it up a little bit at the end anyways. We're gonna go ahead and repeat that process. As you see, I pulled back the skin a bit, and then I'm just starting with my file parallel under the nail and making sure not to file into the sidewalls. That is a big mistake a lot of beginners make, and it's something that people don't realize is messing up the shape of their nails, is they're filing at an angle where the natural nail is the free edge. You also want to keep this step minimal and your shaping minimal as needed. It's nice to follow a routine, but sometimes we're just following them mindlessly. We only want to file where we actually need to. We sometimes think we need to file more than we need to. Sometimes less is more. So maybe err on the side of caution if you tend to overfile of doing less, and you can always go back if you need to. I'm finishing off by filing against the sidewall, so this just makes sure that they are nice and straight. I try to keep my file parallel as well, but also not angle it in too much. That can create a coffin shape. And I definitely prefer the more coarse file for the free edge as well. Since it is sharper, it does give you a more crispy finish there and remove any excess product. Sometimes with certain nail tips, you'll see a little bit of plastic come off, so you can just take that off. It's really not a big deal. Sometimes there's just extra pieces that come off when you're using a sharper file. So I just repeat that process, but also don't feel like you have to be so rigid with your routine. If you feel like you want to do the cuticle area last, or you even want to file against the sidewalls first or the free edge and then do underneath the sidewalls, do what works best for you. And I will let the music play while I finish up this step with the hand file. just wanted to come back here. This is a good example of filing under the free edge under certain areas to remove excess product, but still trying to be careful not to file into the corners where the natural nail meets the free edge. The nail is covered with product now, but I really mean where that extension has been glued on underneath and where your actual sidewalls are of your natural nails. You don't want to file into those. And the pinky is actually the best example of this entire process because I had to use a bigger nail tip for this nail. The smallest one wasn't small enough and I had to file down a bit, but obviously it wasn't perfect. Application looks more uneven when I did this nail particularly, and so the filing here under the sidewalls is even more important. You can see how it really cleaned up that shape. And here I'm being even more mindful of the pressure that I'm putting on my file and where I'm placing it. I don't want to taper in the nail too much, but at the same time, like I said, because the nail tip had to be filed down is uneven in some areas, I also want to make sure that I straighten everything out. And then I'm just finishing off by filing the free edge, and then that will be it for the hand filing. And the pinky can be quite uncomfortable to file, especially on your own hand, so holding it like this, I know it looks funny, but you just want to brace your hands. You can also put them down on the table or on a surface, and that can help relieve the pressure as well. Final step is just buffing everything out. This is not to remove any product or do any actual shaping. This is just to polish and smooth everything out so that we have a nice surface to paint on for nail art, and it also helps remove any scratches that we may have on the nails from filing. Use a 240 grit sanding band. This is the very fine grit sanding band. You can use it on the cuticle area. You can use this to clean up anything else that might be there, or if you prefer to seal the cuticles with that, but really I'm just using this to smooth out the surface of the nail and make sure everything is ultra polished. So you'll see that I'm not going over the nails a ton. I'm just going over the cuticle area once, and then I'll go over the surface of the nail. Definitely can help smooth out areas that you may have missed with your hand file or e-file with the 5-in-1 bit, but you can also just use a buffer by hand, which is what I'll do in the next step, but you can also use a combination of both if you want an even more smooth finish. The e-file does give you more speed and more control than a buffer, but the buffer I think you can use with the cuticle oil, which is really nice. So the cuticle oil also really helps polish and smooth everything out. And it has no effect on nail art and retention and chipping. All I do after this is I wash my hands, and then I also cleanse with alcohol, and then we are good to go for nail art. Now for the fun part, let's get into this chrome hearts design. So this entire design is all chrome isolation. So we're starting off with a matte top coat. I fully cured that, and now I'm just buffing everything out. This just helps ensure that when we draw our design that the chrome powder does not stick to anything but the design. I like using the Goy matte top coat for my chrome isolation. It's linked in my Amazon storefront. Rinse with alcohol again, and I mix some black gel polish with a non-wipe top coat. This just helps the chrome powder turn out more shiny in my opinion. We're starting off with the classic chrome hearts cross design. We're going to do a little variation of it, and this is going to be a staple in this design. So I'm just using a dotting tool to map everything out. This is the easiest way to do it in my opinion. You just want to make sure that the two pairs of dots that are flanking the sides are higher up towards ones on the top and not towards the bottom, if that makes sense, so the proportions are correct. Now while the gel is uncured, because we can't cure anything until we're ready to apply our chrome powder, I'm starting to drag the dots down and to the sides. So the ones on the top are going towards the one on the bottom, and then the ones on the side are going towards the center. You're just drawing a slight curve with those lines and then filling it in. Just think of it as a grid and a pattern that you're following, and while you're filling it in, just make sure you don't bring it all the way to the edge, because if you want it to have that rounded shape, all you need to do is once you get to that point is start further connecting those lines. So it's best to go towards that top dot, whether it's on the top or the bottom, and just start dragging towards the center, and then you'll see the design start coming to life. So then you can just go ahead and fill in those little corners here like I'm doing now. And we're going to be repeating this design a lot, so don't worry, we'll go go over it a couple of times. As I mentioned with chrome isolation, you cannot flash cure or do anything with this design until you're ready to apply your chrome powder, so you just kind of have to hope for the best and try your best to not make any mistakes. If you do, clean it up with acetone the best you can, or else the chrome powder will stick to that area. So once you've drawn the design all in one go ahead and cure in your lamp for about 20 seconds, and then I just take my chrome powder. This is just a silver chrome powder I got from Amazon, and I typically use these sponges to apply. But for designs where I need to apply more pressure, designs that are like more 3D, the eyeshadow applicators that most chrome powders come with work better, or you can use your fingers as long as you're wearing gloves. We are going to be building up this design, so keep those sponges handy. It's great to get rid of that excess, and then we're gonna go ahead and put this back in our lamp and fully cure before we start building up the second layer. So for the chrome hearts design, you basically have to build up that 3D texture in layers. So this is the first layer, and like I mentioned, we fully cured in our lamp. I also added a little bit of rhinestone glue to my mixture just so it's a little bit thicker and I can start building up that 3D texture more, especially at the edges that are rounded. This adds more volume to the design and brings it closer to the reference image. If you really want to do a true chrome hearts design, you want to build up each individual piece and flash cure and do it that way, but I'm keeping it a little bit more simple today. The texture and design still looks great, but like the true chrome hearts cross, you got to build up the 3 little lines on each part of the cross and do it individually, so it's a little bit more tedious, but you can do different variations and use this technique if you want to do that, or however you want to do the design. And I made the circle at the center separate just so it stands out a little bit more and there is more texture there, so that part is done individually. You just use the same mixture, flash cure, and then apply your chrome powder, and then you can go ahead and fully cure after. Basically, I fully cure once I've applied the chrome, and then I use the sponge to clean it all up, and then we can go ahead and top coat it. I love how this one turned out. I think it's perfect for the thumb. This is going to be the largest of the chrome hearts crosses that we do. I think it has the perfect amount of texture. It definitely looks 3D, and the chrome powder stuck where I wanted to, which is the best part. I just think that the Moon Phases collection and just the white shimmer base, the milky white base, the clear base are just so perfect for chrome designs, especially if you're like a nail artist that specifically does like alt nail art. I think these are like the perfect bases to use. But let's keep going with this design. So for the pointer, I'm going to be doing the chrome hearts Rubik's Cube, doing some designs inspired by that. So I'm going in with my matte top coat, fully curing, and then buffing out so our chrome powder doesn't stick to the rest of the base. Here's a closer look at the mixture I create for my chrome design. So I just take some black gel polish, and I like to use Koopa top coat for my non-wipe mixture for chrome, just because I feel like it's a cheaper top coat and I feel like it does give you that shinier effect. I don't know what that top coat has in it that does that. And then if I want it to be thicker, I will just add some non-wipe rhinestone glue. Basically the way it works, my understanding is the chrome powder sticks to anything that's non-wipe, and we've matted and buffed out the base so it won't stick to that, and then the black mixed into it just makes the chrome powder more opaque. There are specialized products out there designed for chrome because it is so popular, but I just use what I have on hand and it works fine. So for the Rubik's Cube inspired design, I started by drawing out these squares, and then I'm just going ahead and filling them in. And like I said, again, I haven't cured anything, so I haven't flash cured the outline or anything. I'm gonna go ahead and make sure the entire box is filled in for both of them before I apply the chrome powder. I use a 20mm brush for the outline of the box, and then I like to use a 12mm brush for the inside. It's just easier to fill it in with a brush that's a little bit shorter. But the longer liner brush definitely helps with the outline of the box. It just helps make sure that your hand is more steady. As I completely messed up here, as you can see, it happens, but what I did is I took some acetone on a brush and I'm just using it to clean up very thoroughly, otherwise the chrome will stick to wherever that gel went. I have noticed that even if you think you've cleaned it up, like with alcohol, it sometimes has like residue that the chrome powder will stick to, so try to clean it up with acetone if you do make any mistakes. And then I went ahead and cured for about 20 seconds. I'm applying my chrome powder with the eyeshadow applicator, and then I'm going to use a sponge to dust that off before fully curing in my lamp to seal that chrome. Just a friendly tip to put the cap back on your chrome powder in between steps so that you don't accidentally knock it over. I have done that and it is not fun to clean up. So now we're building up the next layer, which is going to be the star across the square that we've drawn, which is like the reference image. I'll put up another reference image as well. And this first layer I'm going to draw very thin, just because stars, you have to make sure that the lines are not too bulky, that they have like a sharp point. And it's easier for me to do that in a thin layer for the initial outline of the design, and then we'll go back and build it up with some more glue, like rhinestone glue, just so it has some more 3D texture. These I decided to do one at a time, so I went ahead and applied the chrome powder to this square first and wiped off with a sponge. And for me, now that I can see that the star outline is already there, I can go ahead and build that up with the rhinestone stone glue to make it more 3D. Please excuse the camera going out of focus. Sometimes with chrome it just does that. I think it's just with the reflective nature of it, and it also is just another reason that drawing on top of chrome can be a little difficult. You just got to make sure you can really see what you're doing. Final step for the star is just adding a few dots. We're going to add one at the center of the star. Like I did for the cross, I went ahead and used the chrome powder on that separately, and then I went ahead and did the dots around the square, so I just added one at each corner. So I will let the music play while you watch me finish that up and then repeat that for the other square. So that's the Rubik's Cube inspired design. I think it looks really great over moon foam. Moon foam especially is such a great base for any type of chrome nail art. Now we are going to repeat the chrome hearts cross design we did on the thumb, but we're going to do 2 of them, and one of them will be partially showing, so these are going to be a little bit smaller. You'll see that I am mapping out the dots to make sure that they are lined up, so the 3 dots at the top and the bottom, which will be the top and bottom of the cross. And then like I mentioned before, you want to make sure that the dots on the side are a little bit higher, so they are towards the top of the cross versus the bottom. You don't want them to be exactly in the middle. Once you've got that mapped out, it's pretty simple. You just want to take your 20mm liner brush and start dragging from top to bottom and create this slight curve. I go over the lines as needed as well, and then I'm doing the same step on the sides, creating a shorter but slightly curved line. Then we're just going to fill in the center, but making sure we stop where these 3 dots basically are, and once I get to that point, I'm going to start dragging from the dots upward or downwards, whatever direction I'm looking at, but basically it just helps ensure that the round edges at these parts stays pretty circular and crisp. Trust me, I had to practice this design a few times before I actually did it on my nails, because I was like, I don't want to mess up on my actual nails, so I practiced on a press-on nail, and this was the easiest way to do it. Otherwise it might become a big blob. If it's to your liking, go ahead and cure for about 20 seconds, add your chrome powder, wipe the excess off with a sponge, and then fully cure. And now we're going to draw part of the cross, so you'll see that I'm just doing 2 of the pairs of dots. This might seem a little bit confusing at first, but it's easier to not draw the pair of dots on the right side and just draw them kind of coming out as a curve, create a little bit of an optical illusion of the rest of the cross going into the edge of the nail. We're just drawing part of it, so really it's just going to be 2 sides. So I'm just doing part of the steps, still filling in the center, and then I'm repeating the steps of dragging towards the top and bottom of those circular pieces. And you'll see for the side there, I just added 2 curved lines, made it simple. I think if you try to squeeze in the other dots, because we still made the crosses quite large, it might be a little bit too bulky and look not so well proportioned, so sometimes it's better just to cut off the design. And from there, we're going to repeat the same steps of just building up the design with another layer of 3D gel and then creating that circle at the center. that's how the design turned out, pretty much just a variation of the one on the thumb. And I do like to do a final file after top coat just because we are doing a few layers of gel and just filing the free edge gently again. And don't worry, I've never experienced issues with peeling or chipping with this. You can rest assured that your top coat is not going to peel off, and nor are the edges of the chrome design going to peel off. I actually still have this set on even though I did it quite some time ago, so no issues there. For the next nail, we're going to do a fun design. We're going to do the iconic chrome heart safety pin, and then we're also going to do some nail piercings, which have been my current hyperfixation. So this design will also be built up in layers. We're basically drawing these two parallel lines with a slight curve and then creating the curved end at the top and then creating a circle at the bottom. I found is the easiest way to do that part of the design. So I created the circle at the bottom kind of separately, and then the top of the safety pin I created as an actual half circle, like rounded piece, and then I went ahead and filled that in because, as I mentioned, we will be building that part of the design up and other parts of the design, but this part will be the most 3D. Basically, the pieces of the safety pin that we want to actually stand out, we will build up with more than one layer. So I went ahead and added chrome to this first layer of the design and cured in my lamp. I definitely found the eyeshadow applicator better and easier to use for this specific chrome design for the entire set, just because I can apply more pressure with it, and so many of the designs are 3D and have texture. So as I mentioned, the top of the safety pin is definitely another piece that I went ahead and built up with more texture, and then we also will be drawing the Chrome Hearts cross on this, like a tinier version, which is probably the hardest part of this set. I think the more raised that you can make this top part, and if you can make it a little bit bigger, the better. It'll give you a little bit more space and a larger canvas to draw on. And then I also built up the bottom of the safety pin just so it stands out a little bit more as well. So once we wipe off the excess with our sponge, we will go ahead and start with the cross on the top of the safety pin. And the easiest way to do this, I think, is to draw the center of it, then cure that and do the chrome powder and do the dots around it separately as separate pieces, basically. Because it's so small, I think drawing the cross the same way that I did it for the other designs makes it a little bit difficult. So we're kind of doing a little bit of an optical illusion. I'm drawing the dots at the edges and then bringing them towards the center rather than drawing the entire cross all as one piece, if that makes sense. And it's very small, and the circular pieces do kind of turn into a little bit of a blob, but you get the general idea of it, and you can redo the center piece with the circle, make it stand out a little bit more, and I think that helps. I'm not worried about making the pieces around the cross so perfect or as big. I'm making the center the focus of this one, and I think it worked a little bit better. Any excess chrome with some acetone that may have spilled over before top coating. We are doing nail piercings, and I do recommend top coating before, just so the top coat doesn't kind of get stuck on the piercings. This is actually quite easy to do, just takes a little bit of a steady hand. I'm taking a cuticle bit and I use it at a pretty low speed to mark where the nail piercings will go, and then at that point I go in at a higher speed, about 10 to 11 RPMs, and drill all the way through. Be careful with this. Obviously you just want to do this on an extension, and even if you think the piercing, like that hole that you made, needs to be bigger, sometimes there's just dust that needs to be cleaned off, so just clean it with a lint-free wipe before you start drilling more. I'm just taking the actual nail piercing, so if you have your nails done and they're long, the easiest way to do it is to grab like 2 pairs of tweezers to open them up. And because the nails are so curved, the smallest ones that I would normally use didn't go around all the way, so I sized up. If you're doing nails, like using nail tips that have more of a curve like I am, I would recommend making the nail piercing a little bit more inwards versus towards the edge, because it can be a little hard to find a piercing that fits. Like, we kind of underestimate how curved they are, so I think I ended up sizing up again and finally found one that fit and had enough space there, and it looked really nice, and I don't think it was too big or anything. But I still do think it's easier and better to size up and place the piercings closer to the center versus at the edge of the curve. Otherwise you might not even really see them, and you don't really want to do it on the sidewall, in my opinion. I just used the tweezers to close the end of the piercing once I found a size that fit, and here's how they look. So I think this was a really great addition to add. It definitely adds to the Chrome Hearts aesthetic, and it's pretty easy to do once you get the hang of it. For the final nail, we are just redoing the cross design, so I ended up keeping it pretty simple for this set in the sense that I'm not doing a huge variation in designs, but I think that's okay. I think that all of the designs, even though a few of them match, still look really good together, and it's kind of nice to practice the same design a few times versus trying to do a bunch of different ones. And it's all very good practice for chrome isolation. So since the pinky is smaller, I ended up making the cross a little bit more towards the center versus the side, just because there's not as much space, but then at the bottom I still made it a little bit more cut off. The nice thing about doing the same design a couple of times is you definitely feel like an expert once you get to that point. Like, I thought the Chrome Hearts cross would be harder to do, and it is definitely a little challenging in its own way, but once you get the technique down of mapping it out, it's actually quite quick and easy. And I actually found the safety pin design the one that took me the longest. So yeah, we're just finishing off with the bottom half here. We're making it cut off like we did on the third finger, and then adding our chrome powder before we build up with the second layer. I went ahead and did the center of the cross last like I did on the other nails. The only thing that I switched up was I made the part that's cut off on the left hand side versus the right hand side, but that's pretty much it. I went ahead and top coated it, and that's the final nail of this set. Here's the full set together. I haven't done a chrome heart set since like when I was a beginner, and this is definitely a much more advanced version than one I did at that time, and it's been on my list for a while, and I'm glad I waited because I think the Moon Phases bases are perfect for this design and aesthetic. I got a chance to use all 3 of the new bases, and I think they work really well even when you mix and match them. Usually I'm like ready and bored of a set like after a week, but I actually still have these on a few weeks later, and I'm not looking forward to taking them off. I will really miss this set. It was really fun to do, and here's a couple more videos and photos I took with my phone. I'm definitely looking forward to doing more sets with these new bases, and I hope you all enjoyed seeing the new collection. I hope you enjoyed seeing this tutorial. I hope you enjoy the products in the new collection. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video, which is a Gel X video, so stay tuned.